Chapter 19. Break out in 30 seconds, Samakro called from his position behind the Springhawk's weapons station. Standing behind Cherry, Thalia stifled a yawn. Most of their search pattern had been short flights, but this particular one had been long enough that Thrawn had opted to use their Skywalker instead of the slower jump-by-jump method, which was all to the good as far as Thalias was concerned. Ever since they'd left the Patatas behind and started their pirate search, Cherry had mostly been sitting around the suite with nothing to do but eat, sleep, do her lessons, play, and slowly go stir-crazy. On most of the Springhawk's trips, Thalias's largest problem was coping with their Skywalker's fatigue and stress. Dealing with a 10-year-old's boredom was an entirely different challenge. What made it worse was that there was no defined end in sight. The chaos was a huge place, and even with information from the Patatas narrowing it down, there were hundreds of star systems where a pirate gang could lurk. Thrawn's decision to confine their search to systems containing planets the Vagari could live on narrowed things down enormously, but even Thalias knew that choice was largely arbitrary. She could understand the advantage of having some place available nearby to retreat to if something suddenly went sour, but there was no guarantee the Vagari thought that same way. Eventually, of course, Thrawn would have to give up and return to the Ascendancy. The question was whether he would admit defeat before Cherry got hold of a toolkit and started taking apart all their furniture. Cherry inhaled sharply in her third sight trance, her hands moving seemingly of their own volition across the controls. Thalias looked down as the girl shut down the hyperdrive and pulled them back into space normal. Resting her hands reassuringly on Cherry's shoulders, Thalias looked up at the starscape that once again surrounded the ship. "Laser fire!" Afpria snapped from the weapons console, and the space battle blazing in the near distance almost directly ahead of them. "Stand by weapons," Thrawn said calmly from his command chair. "Dalvu? I make it 4 ships," Dalvu called, hunching over her displays. 3 fighter-class attackers, probably gunships, 1 medium-sized defender, probably a freighter. All configurations unknown, but they don't look Patatas to me." "I agree," Thrawn said, "though they do bear some resemblance to ancient artifacts we've uncovered from the region northeast zenith of here." "Captain, we're being hailed," Brish spoke up. "The freighter captain is requesting assistance." Thrawn didn't answer. Thalias looked over her shoulder to see that he was leaning forward as he gazed out the viewport at the battle. His eyes narrowed, his forehead creased in thought. Thalias looked at Samakro, found he was also watching Thrawn. The first officer's expression, in contrast with his commander's, was not so much thoughtful as slightly puzzled. "Sir?" Brish prompted hesitantly. "I heard you," Thrawn said. For another moment he continued to watch the battle. Then, with a microscopic nod, he leaned back in his chair and touched the comm key. "Urgently needed," a wheezing voice rattled off in the Minasiat trade language. "Repeat, unknown warship. This is Captain Fsir aboard the freighter Salt Barrel. We have come under attack by violent and evil marauders. Please, your aid is urgently needed." "Sir," Samakro said, a hint of warning in his voice. Thrawn inclined his head in acknowledgement, and Thalias thought she spotted a hint of a smile as he keyed the mic. "This is Senior Captain Thrawn of the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet warship Springhawk," he said in Minasiat. "My apologies, but we are engaged in a vital mission that forbids us to stop and assist others." Thalias frowned. Engaged in a vital mission? She'd never heard that rule before. From the look on Samakro's face, neither had he. "Senior Captain," he murmured. Thrawn muted the mic. "I have a suspicion, Mid-Captain," he said, nodding toward the distant. "Let's see what they do." The wait wasn't long. Even as Samakro also turned to the viewport, one of the gunboats broke off its attack on the freighter and headed for the Springhawk. "As I expected," Thrawn said. "Afpria, prepare spectrum lasers for return fire." "Yes, sir," Afpria said. "Should I prep spheres and breachers?" "I think not," Thrawn said. "The lasers should be sufficient." Cherry muttered something, and Thalias felt the shoulder muscles under her hands tense up. The girl hadn't seen a lot of combat, but she'd seen enough to know that the standard Chiss 3-layer response was usually necessary to take out even a warship as small as a gunboat. But Thrawn wasn't going to do that. What did he know, Thalias wondered, that she didn't? The gunboat reached combat range and opened fire, raking the Springhawk with a pair of heavy lasers as it simultaneously made a hard turn to evade return fire. "Sir?" Afprio asked, his hands poised on the firing controls. "A moment, Senior Commander," Thrawn said. The gunboat curved around and again fired, its lasers again skittering across the Springhawk's hull. It started to turn again, as it had before. "Fire," Thrawn said. The gunboat's lasers had slashed across the Springhawk instead of focusing on a single spot, a tactic that seemed odd to Thalia's. Perhaps the fighter's crew was inexperienced, or perhaps they were hoping luck and a scattergun approach would allow them to hit something vital and unprotected. If that was their plan, it failed. Thalia's could see the electrostatic barrier status board from where she was standing, and the Springhawk's defensive sheath was holding up quite well against the attack. Unfortunately for the attackers, Afprio was fully experienced and probably hadn't relied on luck since he was 8. As the gunboat again swung around, he fired a full salvo of the Springhawk's lasers, all of them centered on the aft thruster section, all of them tracking with the target's movement. Thalia held her breath, visualizing the focused energy tearing into and through the hull metal, and with a burst of flame and smoke, the gunboat exploded. Thalia blinked. That was fast. Much faster than the Springhawk's usual battles, in fact. Apparently, Thrawn had been right not to bother with breachers and plasma spheres. The debris cloud expanded into the vacuum, and as it dissipated, Thalia saw that the other 2 gunboats had abandoned their attack on the freighter and were now moving toward the Springhawk. "Afpria, fire at will," Thrawn ordered. "Again, limit your response to lasers." "Yes, sir," Afpria said, and Thalius caught his tight smile as he bent over his controls. Of all the bridge officers, she'd often thought, he seemed to take the most pure joy from his job. The Springhawk's lasers flashed, and again and again. The gunboats returned fire as best they could, but they'd started too far away for the range of their weapons, and their attacks were as ineffective as the first fighters had been. They were just starting to reach the distance where the first attack had occurred when the Springhawk's lasers finished digging through their hulls. And once again, the serene starry background was marred by the violence of explosions. Thrawn waited until the twin firestorms burned out into expanding spheres of blackened and half-melted wreckage. Then he again touched his mic key. "This is Senior Captain Thrawn," he said. "Captain Fsir, please report your status." "Much more promising now, Senior Captain Thrawn," the alien's wheezing voice came back. "My passengers and I offer our humble gratitude for your timely assistance. How may we repay you?" "You may begin with information," Thrawn said. "Who are your people? Where do you come from? And what is your purpose here?" "We are the Watith," Fsir said, his voice suddenly hesitant. "We come from a system far away. May I ask why you wish its location?" "Merely to add to my general knowledge of the chaos," Thrawn said. "Certainly the Chiss have no territorial ambitions beyond our borders. Yet you identify yourself as an expansionary fleet. The title also includes the word defense," Thrawn pointed out. "But no matter, tell me why you're here." "A safer question," Fsir said, his caution fading. "We came to this system to study the possibility of setting up a long-range communications relay station." "A triad transmitter? Is that what the Chiss call it?" Fsir asked. "Oh yes, of course. An obvious name. 3 poles, triad. Yes, that makes sense. At any rate, as you know if you've spent much time in this region, the nations here are few in number, small in size, and great in separation. The nearest relay station is controlled by the Patatas, who never allow others to use it." Thalia smiled to herself. If the Patatas were really that miserly with their triad, it made their willingness to let Thrawn use it even more of an honor than she'd thought. They must really have wanted their Nicardan oppressors eliminated. "Our leaders thought a relay station of our own could be a good investment," Fsir continued. "It would be available to all, for a suitable fee, of course, set up on an unclaimed world that could nevertheless support the necessary operational crew and their families." "Interesting," Thrawn said. "I presume you've now decided to remove this system from your list." "Why do you say that?" Fsir asked. "Our study shows the planet is perfectly suitable for our needs. Except that someone doesn't want you here." "Someone? Oh, those fighters?" Fsir made a rude-sounding noise. Hardly a statement of warning. They were merely a group of pirates pausing for a navigational recalibration before returning to their base. They obviously saw us as an opportunity and decided to take it. Thalias caught her breath. Pirates? Vagari pirates? Had they succeeded in capturing us, they would have been sorely disappointed by our banquet of specialized electronic equipment and our famine of marketable goods, Sir said. Though perhaps they were seeking captives, all the more reason to be grateful for your intervention. You said they were pirates, Thrawn said, and Thalias could hear the studied nonchalance in his voice. Do you know which group they're from? Don't misunderstand, please, Sir cautioned. I don't know for a fact that these were any raiders in particular. I simply assumed their identity and purpose because of our current proximity to the Vagari pirate base. A quiet stir ran through the bridge. Thalias looked back at Thrawn, noting that the small smile she'd seen earlier was back. Interesting, he said. As it happens, the Vagari are the exact group we're looking for. Remarkable, Sir said. Then we are well met indeed. The universe has seen fit to reward you for your courage and kindness to the Watith. That is, he paused. May I ask what your purpose is in seeking out the Vagari? You do not wish to join them, do you? Hardly, Thrawn assured him. We're here to assess whether or not they pose a continuing threat to this region. Ah, Seer said, not sounding entirely convinced. Well, in that case, perhaps I may offer my services as a guide to their base? It would be enough to give us the coordinates, Thrawn said. There's no reason you need to expose yourself to danger by leading us there yourself. I would like nothing more than to avoid further danger, Sir said. Unfortunately, our coordinate system likely varies greatly from that of the Chiss, and I don't trust my directions to lead you there with accuracy. Also, to be perfectly honest, right now I think remaining in your company will be our best way of avoiding danger. There may be other pirate stragglers about, and you saw how poorly equipped we are to face such threats. Before we travel to the Vagari base, I wish to examine the wreckage of these gunboats. Sure actually sputtered. The wreckage? Senior Captain Thrawn, are you perhaps blind? There is no wreckage, only dust. On the contrary, Thrawn said, we are tracking several larger pieces of debris. More than that, even small bits can be valuable. The gunboat's violent explosions, for example, strongly suggest their weaponry included missiles as well as lasers. There may be chemical deposits that will help us learn what sort of missiles they were, including the propellant and explosive mix used. Fragments of their electronics might similarly offer clues as to the ship's origin or their computer and communications systems. You are indeed wizards if you can glean so much from so little, Sir said. Very well. Can you estimate how long this examination will take? 5 days at the most, Thrawn said. Likely only 3 or 4. In the meantime, you're free to continue your planetary survey. Our survey was largely complete, Sir said, sounding doubtful. Still, I suppose we could fill the time by beginning the follow-up study to find a suitable location for the transmitter. A more immediate concern, and the reason I asked for your timeline, is that with the failure of these ships to return the Vagari may send out a search party. If they do, we'll deal with them. Yes, Sir said, his voice sounding uncertain. I merely thought a wiser strategy might be to attack their base quickly, before they were alerted that there may be trouble. In general, that is indeed a good strategy, Thrawn agreed. In this case, knowing as much about the enemy as possible offers a potentially better advantage even than surprise. I yield to your deeper knowledge of such things, Sir said. Very well, we shall wait until you are ready. Nevertheless, I urge you to move as quickly on your studies as possible. We'll get to it immediately, Thrawn promised. While my people are working on that, perhaps you could give me a tour of your vessel. Why would you want such a thing? Sir asked, his voice suddenly guarded. I want to meet your crew and technicians, Thrawn explained. We'll be going into a likely combat situation, and I need to assess your capabilities. Combat is your venue, Senior Captain, Sir said. We have no intention of getting near any battles. The Vagari may have other ideas, Thrawn said dryly. Regardless, I need to know what your ship and people are capable of in order to properly plan my tactics. I doubt we're capable of anything, really, Sir admitted. More to the point, we have a great deal of proprietary equipment aboard for our work on the relay station. My superiors would be highly displeased if any of our secrets were deciphered and appropriated. In my experience, there is little that can be learned from simply observing the casings of electronic equipment, Thrawn said, particularly since the labeling will all be in your script, which undoubtedly is unknown to us. Your navigational equipment can of course be shrouded to prevent me from obtaining any clues to your world's location. I suppose, Seer said, still sounding hesitant. Perhaps your superiors could be persuaded to look upon it as payment for our rescue of their people and secrets, Thrawn suggested. In addition, a visit would give you the opportunity to see if your legends of the Chiss are accurate. Who suggested we even have legends of the Chiss? Thrawn smiled. Come now, Captain. Everyone in the near reaches of the chaos has legends of the Chiss. Sir sighed. Very well, Senior Captain. Give me some time to prepare and coordinate with my people. I'll contact you when we're ready. I'll await your call, Thrawn said. In the meantime, we'll begin our work on the battle debris. Farewell. He tapped off his mic. Mid-Captain Samacro, have Shuttle 1 prepped and arranged for 4 armed guards to meet me there. Are you sure? Samacro asked, pulling out his questies and logging the orders. And do you want any other officers along? 4 guards will be sufficient, Thrawn said, and including other officers would make Fesser think we had ulterior motives in coming aboard. Thalia smiled to herself. Of course there were no ulterior motives. Certainly none Seer and his fellow Watith would suspect. Not even Thrawn's fellow Chiss really understood how much of a people's culture and society he could glean merely by looking at their clothing and their ship's decor. Also, organize 3 shuttle crews to begin collecting debris, Thrawn continued. They're to focus on larger pieces, but also gather samples of dust. And bodies, Samacro asked. Yes, if there are any, Thrawn said, though I didn't see anything in the explosion's aftermath that looked intact. Mid-Commander Dalvu? I saw no bodies either, Senior Captain, the sensor officer concurred. But even if nothing survived intact, there should be fragments. Agreed, Thrawn said. If so, Mid-Captain, make sure the collection crews watch for them. Yes, sir, Samacro said, still working his questies. Is there anything in particular you want the analysts to look for? Begin with the missile debris and electronics I mentioned to Captain Seer, Thrawn said. Body fragments are to be analyzed for genetic material. He looked out the viewport to the distant Watith ship. I want to know if Vagari were flying those gunboats, he added. And if not, who was? Senior Aide Lockjeep's eyes went a little wider as she read Lakinda's personnel profile from her questies. Senior Captain Sodlakindaro, she said, sounding both surprised and a little bit in awe. Senior Captain, excuse me, but I confess I hadn't expected anyone of your rank and status to answer the family summons. I don't know why not, Lakinda said. I'm as much Sodlak as you are. Yes, of course you are, Lockjeep said hastily. Apologies, Senior Captain. We've been highly gratified by the response already, and your presence is a fantastic additional bonus to the operation. It underlines the immense pride we all have in our family. I'm glad we're all working together, Lakinda said, studying the other woman. The emergency summons had come from Patriel Lakuni, and Lakinda had naturally expected that someone from the Patriel's office would be in charge here. Why was a mere counselor's senior aide passing out the duty assignments? What exactly is this all about? I note that the ship you command, the Greyshrike, is a heavy cruiser, Lockjeep continued, still peering at her questies. As you may know, we have an old family frigate, the Midsummer, which has been stored here for the past 50 years. We'd be honored if you would agree to be its commander. I'm happy to serve wherever Patriel Lakuni deems best, Lakinda said. What's the Midsummer's current status? About 90%, Lockjeep said. Our local crews have been working on bringing it up ever since Patriel Lakuni sent out the emergency call 3 days ago. And as other officers and warriors began arriving, those work parties were of course steadily expanded. Her lip twitched. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we'll have the time and personnel to give you both cruisers. However, the Apogee is the better of the two, and the overseers estimate both it and the Midsummer will be ready to fly within the next 10 to 12 hours. I see I made it just in time, Lakinda said. May I ask where Patriel Lakuni is right now? She and Counselor Lakoviv are coordinating the operation from Counselor Lakoviv's office, Lakjeep said. I'm sure she'll be available to offer some words of encouragement before things heat up. That's the second time you've used the word operation, Lakinda said, not counting its use in the original summons. What exactly is going on? Well, Lakjeep hesitated. At the moment, that's classic. It all started when a group of aliens, the Agbui, arrived on Selwis. Lakinda listened in silence and growing amazement as Lakjeep laid out the story of aliens and jewelry in all but untouched Neox mines. That's just a little bit unbelievable, she said when the senior aide had finished. Are you sure you're reading all this correctly? I've seen the mines myself, Lakjeep assured her. The entire world is pristine, untouched, and unoccupied, probably even unknown. She dug into a pocket. I also brought back souvenirs. You're sure that's Nyx? Lakinda asked, studying the piece of wire. Absolutely, Lakjeep said. Every sample we've obtained has been carefully analyzed. Her lip twitched. Including one we borrowed from a citizen. Lakinda nodded. The possibilities here were tremendous, but they were also ominous. She studied Lakjeep's face. There was an enthusiasm half hidden beneath that calm expression, determined and hard-edged. This will certainly be of huge benefit to the family, Lakinda said. But it seems to me that a resource like this ought to belong to the Syndicure and the fleet. Absolutely, Lakjeep said, as if that was obvious. The Sodlak family merely wishes the honor and triumph of its discovery. Honor, and perhaps a petition for reinstatement into the ruling families? Lakjeep gave a nonchalant sort of shrug. That would only seem fair. Yes, Lakinda murmured. Like the shrug, the words had also been casual. But it seemed to Lakinda that the enthusiasm in the senior aide's eyes went just a little bit stronger and harder. She wanted a return to the Sodlak days of glory, all right. Wanted it very badly. But then, didn't every member of the family? And really, if everything Lakjeep said was true, didn't they deserve it? In the meantime, we need to get you to your ship, Lakjeep continued. Come, I'll walk you to the shuttle.